I didn't notice him at first. That sounds impossible now, I know, but when you've spent years feeling invisible, you forget what it's like to be seen. My daughter, Lily, brought him home for dinner on a Saturday. Said his name was Noah, 23, in grad school, sweet smile, quiet eyes. She called him her real thing. I smiled. I always smile, because that's what mothers do when their daughters are in love. He shook my hand politely, called me Mrs. Albright. I laughed and said, "Oh God, just call me Anna." He smiled, but not like a boy. More like a man who was taking in more than just names.
I didn't know what to make of it then.
I just noticed how gently he spoke to her, how he listened when she rambled, how he rinsed his plate and wiped the counter like someone who was raised well. But mostly, I noticed how he looked at me when he thought I wasn't watching. Not hungry, not bold, just curious. Like he saw something under my skin I'd forgotten was still there. I told myself it was nothing. Just a reflex. A boy being polite. A passing flicker. But that night, after they'd gone upstairs and I was alone in the kitchen with the last of the wine, I found myself thinking about his hands. Not touching me. Not doing anything wrong. Just how sure they looked. How kind. And I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not desire, not yet. Just that sharp, aching awareness that I was a woman. And that someone had noticed. It was Sunday. The day I always cooked too much. Lily had asked if Noah could join us again. "He loves your cooking, Mom," she said, arms looped around my shoulders as she peeked into the simmering pot. I said yes. I always say yes. Dinner was easy. Laughter came naturally. The three of us around that old table, it felt warm. Like something that hadn't existed in this house for years. But then Lily got a call. Something about a group project. She groaned, apologized, said she had to go. "I'll be back in an hour." Noah offered to stay and help me clean. I said, "That's sweet, but unnecessary." He just smiled. "I want to." So we washed dishes together. That's all. Just soap and warm water and 2 pairs of hands moving in practiced rhythm. But there was something in the silence between us. Not awkward, not forced, just quiet and full. He asked me about the framed picture on the counter. "Is that you and Lily at the beach?" I nodded. "When she was 8. We went every summer back then." "You look happy," he said. I looked away. I was. I didn't mean to say it like that, not with a heaviness. But it slipped out. He didn't push. Just kept drying the plates, slow and steady. And then he said gently, "You still look like her, but different." I didn't ask what he meant. Because I knew. He meant older. He meant lonelier. He meant untouched for too long. And I should have changed the subject. I should have gone upstairs, busied myself, anything to stop the ache rising in my chest. But instead, I just stood there, hands in suds, and said, "No one looks at me like that anymore."
And he did. He looked at me.
Not with pity. Not with guilt. Just attention. Like I was still worth seeing. And in that look, something shifted. A quiet crack forming in the wall I'd built for years. He didn't touch me. He didn't say another word. But as he handed me the last plate, his fingers brushed mine, and stayed just a second too long. Not long enough to call it something. But long enough that I didn't sleep that night. Not well. Not without replaying it, over and over, and wondering why his touch had felt more honest than my own husband's ever did. It started small. Lily had a shift at the bookstore, but Noah still came by. "I promised I'd help your mom with the garden," he said, breezing into the kitchen like it was the most natural thing in the world. He wasn't lying. I had joked the week before that my tomato plants were dying of neglect. But he remembered. He showed up with gloves, a kneeling mat, and that gentle, careful voice that never quite let me feel completely safe for myself. We pulled weeds, trimmed stems.
I showed him where the soil was too dry.
He asked me what I used to plant before I gave up on it. I said, "Time. That's what I don't have anymore." But I think we both knew that wasn't the truth. It wasn't about time. It was about touch. And how long it had been since someone knelt beside me, quietly, without asking for anything but a moment of presence. The next time, he brought over a roll of chicken wire and repaired the broken section of my fence. The time after that, it was helping me carry groceries from the car. Always when Lily was busy. Always polite. Never inappropriate. But always close. One day, I brought out iced tea. He was sweaty from trimming hedges. His shirt clung to him. His hair curled a little at the ends. He took the glass from my hand, drank, and looked at me over the rim. Not in a rush. Not flirty. Just aware. And I realized something. Terrible. Something thrilling. I had started dressing differently when I knew he was coming. Softer fabrics. Blouses that dipped just enough. A touch of lipstick I hadn't used in years. Not for him. That's what I told myself. It was for me. Because when he was near, I remembered I had a body. One that still ached. One that still responded. One that, somewhere deep inside, wanted to be seen again. And that scared me more than anything. Because I was starting to believe he saw it. And worse, that he liked what he saw. Lily was out with friends. She texted to say she'd be staying at Julia's for the night. I told her to have fun, be safe, send a photo if they did something cute. Then, maybe 15 minutes later, the doorbell rang. It was Noah. He smiled like he always did, casual, kind, harmless. Thought I'd drop off Lily's charger, he said, holding it up like an offering. I thanked him, told him she was out. He nodded, shifted his weight, lingered. Then, do you mind if I hang out a bit? I've got nowhere to be. I hesitated. But only for a second. Of course, I said. Like it was nothing. Like I was nothing. We sat on opposite ends of the couch at first. I put on a movie, some old romantic comedy I didn't have to think too hard about. Something with witty banter and slow dances in the rain. He leaned back, one arm stretched along the back of the sofa. Legs relaxed. Chest rising and falling in a rhythm that suddenly felt too visible. I could feel the space between us shrinking. Not literally, but emotionally. And God, that was more dangerous. 20 minutes in, I laughed at something. He did too. And when I turned toward him, just slightly our knees brushed. It should have ended there. I should have shifted. Apologized. Pulled back. But I didn't. Because he didn't. Instead, he looked at me, quiet, unblinking, and said, "You laugh with your whole face." I froze. "Most people don't," he added. "They smile. But your eyes do it too." I looked away. Not because I was embarrassed, but because I wanted him to keep looking.
And I didn't know what that said about me.
The movie played on. A kiss scene flickered across the screen. The room went still. He didn't move closer. Neither did I. But our legs stayed touching. Barely. Just enough to feel the heat through denim. My heart was beating too fast for something so small. But it wasn't small. It was the first time I didn't feel alone on that couch. Not as a mother. Not as a placeholder. But as a woman. A woman sitting next to a boy who should have felt off limits. And instead, he felt like the first real thing in years. It was late. The credits had rolled, but neither of us had moved. The only sound was the soft whir of the ceiling fan and the clink of his glass when he set it down. I said something, I don't even remember what. Something about the movie. Something small and stupid to fill the air. And then I reached for the remote. He reached at the same time. His fingers brushed mine and I laughed instinctively. But he didn't pull away. Instead, he slid his hand over mine, not holding it, not fully, just covering it lightly, his palm warm, his touch quiet. And then his thumb moved. Just once. A slow brush across the inside of my wrist. Like he was memorizing my pulse. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't pull away. I should have. But instead I just sat there, frozen, skin on fire, body alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. He looked up at me, slowly, like he was waiting for me to say stop, or no, or what are you doing? But I didn't say any of those things. I just looked back. And in that moment I knew. We both felt it. The shift. The tear. The beautiful, aching thing forming between us that neither of us could name or admit. But both of us were already drowning in. He let go first. pulled his hand back, sat up straighter, cleared his throat. Sorry, he said. But it didn't sound like an apology. I forced a smile. It's fine. But it wasn't.
Not really.
Because my wrist still tingled where he'd touched it. And all I could think as he stood to leave was, what would have happened if I'd touched him back? Lily had gone to visit her father for the weekend. She didn't ask if Noah could stay at the house. She just assumed he wouldn't. He's got a paper due anyway, she'd said. I nodded, pretending I wasn't relieved. Pretending I wasn't already wondering if I'd see him. I spent Saturday in silence. I cleaned the kitchen twice. Changed the sheets. Folded towels I didn't need to fold. Tried not to think about the last time his fingers touched mine. And then, at 9:07 p.m., the doorbell rang. I knew it was him before I looked. He was standing there in a hoodie and jeans, holding a small brown paper bag. Thought you might not have eaten, he said. He looked nervous. Or maybe I was just too aware of him. I stepped aside.
Come in, I said. He did.
We ate takeout at the counter, pretending this was normal. And in some twisted way, it was starting to
feel that way.
Familiar. Dangerous. Comfortable. When I stood to rinse our dishes, I felt him behind me.
Close.
Too close. I froze. He reached around me, not touching me, just placing his glass in the sink beside mine. But his breath was warm against my neck. And I didn't move. Not right away. When I finally turned to face him, I meant to smile, say something light, step back. But he was so close. His eyes searched mine. He whispered, "You're not just her mom to me." And then, like he couldn't help it, like it broke out of him, he kissed me. Soft at first. Testing. Almost scared. But when I didn't stop him, when I let my hand rest gently against his chest, he deepened it. And I let him. I wanted him to. Because in that moment, I wasn't thinking about Lily. Or consequences. Or shame. I was only thinking about how long it had been since someone kissed me like I mattered. When we pulled apart, breathless, I couldn't speak. Neither could he. We just stared at each other, both of us ruined in a way that didn't feel like ruin at all. And then, barely audible, he asked, "Do you want me to go?" And I said,
"No."
He followed me upstairs. Quietly. Slowly. Like he wasn't sure I'd let him. But I did. At the top of the stairs, I stopped. Looked back at him, and for a moment I almost said no. Almost remembered I was someone's mother. That this wasn't a dream. That downstairs, in a drawer by the fridge, was a framed photo of him and Lily on the 4th of July. But then, he touched the small of my back. And every bit of sense I had evaporated. I opened my bedroom door and let him in. The air was different there.
Still. Dense.
Too full. He stood in the center of the room, hands at his sides, waiting for me to say something. But there was nothing left to say. I reached for the hem of my blouse. And for the first time in what felt like years, I didn't feel self-conscious undressing. Because he was looking at me like I was whole. Not younger. Not prettier. Not flawless. Just real. He stepped toward me. Touched my face like I might vanish if he wasn't careful. And when he kissed me again, it wasn't shy anymore. It was intentional. Hungry.
Certain.
Hands finding places that had been lonely for too long. He asked, "Are you sure?" I answered with my mouth against his throat. With my hands pulling him closer. With the sound I made when he pressed against me like he had nowhere else to be. And then we were in my bed. His skin against mine. The weight of him finally answering the ache I'd buried for years. It wasn't fast. Or frantic. It was slow.
Deep.
Like he didn't want to leave any part of me untouched. Like he wanted me to know exactly what it meant to be wanted again. After I lay on my side, facing the wall, he wrapped an arm around my waist, pulled me against him. We didn't speak. We just breathed, tangled together in the dark, like two people who knew they'd broken something sacred, but couldn't bring themselves to regret it. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The morning light felt wrong. Too soft. Too honest. I woke to the sound of his breathing behind me. Steady.
Warm.
His arms still around my waist like he thought if he let go, I'd vanish. Part of me wanted to stay there forever, in that strange warmth, in the quiet where no one knew what we'd done. But another part, the mother in me, felt sick. I slid out of bed gently, careful not to wake him, wrapped myself in my robe, moved through the hallway like I didn't belong in my own house. In the kitchen, I turned on the kettle. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from knowing this couldn't happen again. But I didn't believe myself when I thought it. My phone buzzed.
Lily.
Hey, Mom. We're heading back tonight. Might be earlier than planned. Maybe around 6. Miss you, Red Heart. My stomach dropped. No exclamation point. Just a heart. A daughter texting her mother like everything was normal. Like her boyfriend wasn't upstairs, in my bed, tangled in sheets that still smelled like us. I put the phone down. Harder than I meant to. The noise must have woken him. A moment later, I heard soft footsteps on the stairs. He appeared in the doorway, shirtless, hair messy, eyes still sleepy, and God help me, he looked so young. Hey, he said softly. You okay? I couldn't answer. He crossed the kitchen in 2 steps and reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Not harsh, just afraid. We can't do this, I whispered.
He didn't argue.
He just looked at me for a long moment, then said, but we already did. That silence between us? It was louder than anything either of us could say. I made coffee. He sat at the table. Neither of us knew how to be casual anymore. And for the first time since this started, I wondered not how far we would go, but how much we'd lose when it all came crashing down. She was supposed to come home at 6. She walked through the door at 4:12. I was in the living room pretending to read. He was upstairs. The moment the lock clicked, I froze. Mom, she called, cheerful, a little tired. We left early. Traffic was nothing. I stood so fast the book hit the floor. I'm here. I called back. Too loud. Too fast. She walked in, bags over her shoulder, smiling. The same smile I used to have when I came home to my mother. I hugged her, hoping she wouldn't feel my heart pounding. And then her eyes flicked up the stairs. There was a pause, a blink too long.
Is
Noah here? She asked. I hesitated. That was my mistake. Just half a second. Enough to create a crack. Before I could answer, we both heard it. The floorboard on the landing. A soft, unmistakable creak. She turned toward the sound. And I swear, I watched her face change. Not suspicion. Not yet. Just awareness. Like something slid into place. He came by earlier, I said, trying to sound casual. He helped fix the screen door. I think he's in the guest room. Maybe fell asleep.
She didn't respond.
Just nodded slowly, her lips tightening.
Right, she said.
Then, I'll go say hi. I panicked. I think he's showering. It was the worst lie I've ever told. Her eyes met mine. There was no fight.
Nok yashashtin.
Just silence. And in that silence, I felt everything unraveling. She said nothing more. Just walked past me, heading upstairs with her bag over one shoulder, and 1,000 thoughts I could see pressing against her brow. I stood in the kitchen after she disappeared, gripping the counter, unable to breathe. Because for the first time, I think she knew. Maybe not everything, but enough. Enough to start hating me. Or worse, enough to understand me. She didn't confront me right away. Dinner passed in a strange quiet. She sat across from me at the table, the same place he'd sat days ago, and asked about groceries, about the neighbor's dog, about nothing. I answered. Mechanical.
Shaky.
And she just watched me. Not with anger, but with something worse. Clarity. Later, as I was rinsing dishes, she came into the kitchen and stood beside me. Not speaking.
Just standing there.
Then, so gently, I almost didn't hear her, she said. He looks at you the way Dad never did. My hands went still in the sink. The water kept running. I didn't turn to her. I couldn't. He was never really mine, she added. I think I knew that. I whispered her name, but my voice cracked. She looked tired, older than she was, like someone who'd lived through a war without ever firing a shot. And then she said, You didn't take him from me. He was never with me like that. But you still broke something. I turned, finally. Tears already falling. I never meant to hurt you. She nodded. I know. Then the part that shattered me. And I wish that made it easier to forgive you. We stood there in silence. Not as mother and daughter, but as two women who had loved the same man for different reasons and been left with nothing but versions of him that were never fully ours. She didn't move out. She didn't scream. She just pulled back.
Quietly.
1 inch at a time. And now, there's a space between us I don't know how to cross. No one ever came back after that night. Not to the house. Not to either of us. It's like he vanished the moment he broke what he didn't know how to fix. And maybe that's the part one deserved most. Not the shame. Not the silence. But the truth that someone finally saw me. And chose to walk away anyway.